Hey guys, and welcome back for week 17 of Willie Creamin's Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Glad to be back. This is the final week of the season for fantasy, so glad to be here with you guys and stuff. I know Big Peppy Nips is already in the chat. Thank you for showing up, man. I appreciate it. Definitely glad to be back and trying to give you guys everything I can for this final week of the season. So let's dive into things real quick here that we've got. So we've got the first big game, and that's going to be tonight. And this was the reason that I wanted to be able to do this tonight for you guys, is just because it's obviously the last week, but this is going to be a Saturday night game that you guys will have. I know it's almost Sunday here for me in Istanbul, but for you guys, you're going to be having a great Saturday night matchup with Detroit at Dallas, and I think that's going to be awesome. So, who's the current fantasy leader? Listen, I'm in the championship week in my league, bro. I need I need a lot of points in order to be able to win. But I'm really hoping tonight is going to be my night. I ended up losing in the guillotine league last week, which was not fun. Out of the final four teams that we have, we do a kind of a 3 week sprint at the end. And I ended up losing to one of my buddies, Nick D from college. I think Big Peppy Nips knows him as well. Um, but in terms of player, oh, listen, it's got to be McCaffrey, man. McCaffrey's the guy you want, and of course, I'm playing against him this week. So he's. I think there was a stat that came out earlier this week that he had gotten, I think, 65 or almost 70% of his teams to the playoffs. So he's definitely the fantasy leader, man. He's the guy. If you ever play fantasy, Christian McCaffrey's the guy that you want with the first pick overall. So, but like I said, guys, this is going to be the last week that we've got. We're getting into things now. Like I said, last week of the fantasy playoffs. I'm hoping you're like me and you're in the finals. But if you're not, this might help you a little bit for next year. But for the people that are, definitely good luck this week. So let's dive into this first game. We've got Detroit at Dallas. Now, listen, Dallas, they're off two rough, really rough road games that they had against Buffalo and Miami. Buffalo, they got crushed in. Miami, they lose right at the end. It was just, one was massively disappointing, the other one kind of heartbreaking. This is a team that needs to right the ship right here before the playoffs, and they've been looking. They've been looking to be able to do that. Here they go. They got a good matchup at home. Detroit's kind of riding high after locking up the playoff spot on their end in their division, but they want to make sure that they're not going to have that first round exit in the playoffs. So they got to get things right here. Like I mentioned, Detroit fresh off that playoff win, clinching the playoffs against Minnesota. They had a great game. It was really fun to be able to watch them. Now they get a massive test, right? They've got to go to Big D, play Dallas here. And this is not only for their offense, but for their defense. They're going to have a test in this game. So if Philly and San Francisco don't watch themselves, they could end up seeing the playoffs going through Detroit. I really don't think that's likely to happen, but there's still an opportunity for that to happen. So, let's go ahead and jump into the fantasy points of it. Some of the guys I'm starting, listen, Detroit starting five. If you've been watching, you know who they are. But Goff, Montgomery, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, and Laporta, they're all the guys you want to be starting. Yes, Laporta may have let you down last week. I know it. And I was lucky in my matchup that he didn't score much. But week before he crushed it, right? Like, if you're still in it, you have to start him. He's a guy that is honestly, he's kind of dispelled that myth of the tight end rookies not being able to perform in fantasy. So, listen, Pollard owners, I'm one of them. I think we're just gluttons for punishment at this point. But Rico Dowdle's out, so you got to start him this week. Even though he's playing, he got a rough matchup against Detroit. Still got to throw him out there. He still has opportunity in the passing game to be able to get things done. So definitely run him out there as well. CD Lamb, absolutely. Dak, like he's been solid. Besides the Buffalo game, you have to keep riding this guy, right? Like he's been an absolute MVP this year. Maybe not in terms of the NFL league, but in fantasy, he's been an absolute stud. And most people were getting him in the ninth, 10th round in fantasy. So Uh, Ferguson, listen, I think he could rebound this game, and this is a perfect matchup for him to be able to do that. I really don't have any fades this game. It's just honestly going to be a great game between both teams. All right, so we go to Orchard Park now. So we got New England at Buffalo. As I mentioned last week, New England just loves playing the role of spoiler. They've done that very well this year. And how funny is it that they may have even fucked themselves over in the process of doing that? They had the second pick in the draft, but now they have the fourth pick in the draft with the win over Denver. So look for them to not care about the draft and try to ruin Buffalo's playoff aspirations. Buffalo also they've been chugging along lately. Like, you look at some of the it seems like as soon as we stop talking about the Bills, they start actually playing well. And they're doing it in unconventional ways with Stefan Diggs not really being that guy. And he is that guy, but not putting up numbers on the stat sheet the way we're used to really seeing, but they're still being able to win games. So they didn't play as well as hope they would have against the Chargers. Yeah, they still won, but don't forget this team. They beat some very good teams over the last month, and no one wants to draw this team in the playoffs. Cleveland, Buffalo, two teams that none of those AFC teams, even the ones up top, want to play because they could easily end up losing those games to either Buffalo or Cleveland in the wild card round. Some of the guys that I'm going to be starting, listen, Allen, he's just got too much upside. And yes, I know it's New England. I know they game plan very well, but and Allen kind of got scored very few points against Dallas that week because they just ran the ball. But Allen's just got too much upside to not play, especially in championship week. Cook, yes, he was a little slightly disappointing last week, but he faces a good New England defense as well. But he's going to get his 20 plus opportunities. You got to run him out there as well. And Stephon Diggs, listen, he hasn't been as productive. Like I mentioned, they have been winning games still. Maybe they repay him that favor this week. And trust me, if I had Diggs on my team, I would not want to see him on the bench this week if he goes off for 3 touchdowns. That's something I don't want. Um, Talk about people I'm fading. Listen, Gabe Davis, nope, like I'm not getting fooled this week. I ended up waking up in the middle of the night last week, and I decided to bench Quentin Johnston and started Gabe Davis instead, and I ended up making the finals because of that. But I got my one good week out of him. I'm not getting fooled again. I'm not setting myself up to be disappointed. He's hitting my bench. I've got too many other guys that are high riding ready to play. I don't want to bank on Gabe Davis. So Stevenson, listen, he was just placed on IR this week as well. So hopefully you're fading him and you've got better options now. But he's that's kind of a rough thing. Elliott, I didn't mention him. He should probably be starting. The way he's been playing lately, he's definitely been good. Bailey Zappi seems to only look his direction whenever he drops back. He might be a solid play against Buffalo, even though Buffalo's defense has been better over the last month. A sleeper that I have for this week is Hunter Henry. Listen, if he's healthy, could be a good start this week, especially depending on who you're rocking with for tight end. I don't think if you've got Travis Kelsey, you should be trotting Hunter Henry out there instead. But I'm just saying, look at who you have. If it's not a good matchup, Henry is a good one, and he seems to be well trusted within this offense as well. All right, moving on. We've got Atlanta and Chicago. Listen, Atlanta, they had the surprise win over Indy after losing to Carolina. They're one game back in the division, but they would likely need help in order to and to win out in order to be able to make the playoffs. As New Orleans currently owns the tiebreaker against them. Chicago, listen, they're already looking towards next year, right? They've got some big decisions coming down the play, whether to keep Fields, move on, what are they going to do? But games like this matter for his chances for both outcomes, right? Money for a new team or to continue as Chicago's starter. He's got to be able to go out there and perform. In terms of fantasy, listen, Bijan, yes, he cooked me 2 weeks ago, but of course he pops off last week, and that's what ended up cooking me in terms of the guillotine league. But you've got to ride him, right? Like it's too good of a matchup not to do that. In terms of people I'm fading, listen, Pitts and London, although they are better with Heineke, they're just not fantasy relevant at the time. Yo, Vash, what's up, man? Glad to have you in here. I appreciate it, bro. Thanks for hopping in. Uh, Algier, listen, he had a decent game last week as well, but it's just too tough competing with Bijan and then also Patterson in the backfield for touches. That's just too much. I actually am also fading Justin Fields this week. I just don't like the matchup against Atlanta. I'm not saying he's not going to go out there and score points, but if I have a better option, I'd be trotting them out there instead. This is the one thing about Fields is he could at any point in time pop off on any given week and really put up a buku amount of points. But I just don't really like the matchup against Atlanta, against a team that really runs and grinds the clock. I think it just gives him less opportunity. And if he goes out there and starts making mistakes at the beginning, it's going to be very difficult for him to catch up. All right, let's move on here. We got the Raiders at Indy. Now, for this game, this seems to be the new look Raiders. I mean, they're just trying to have some fun, trying to sneak into the playoffs. I know they don't have a great chance. They're actually the I think one of the lower percentage chances right now, sub 20. But they still do have a chance if things go right to be able to make the playoffs. And they get that win over the Chiefs. Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. I mean, that just statistically does not make sense for a team to be able to win if that doesn't happen. But they pounded the ball, they ran the ball into the ground. They end up grinding out the Chiefs. They get, one thing I have to mention. And listen, let me just make sure this was mentioned earlier on the podcast this week. But I know Big Peppy Nips will appreciate this. In that game with Kansas City losing to Las Vegas, it was the first time in the NFL that there was a fart and a taint back to back. A fart is a fumble and return for touchdown, and a taint is a touchdown after interception. So I just wanted to mention that that was the first time that happened, and I thought it was very epic that it did. All right, back to the games real quick. Listen, in terms of some of the stuff they have going on, listen, they're going to have another chance here. The Raiders are against this reeling Colts team who just they seem one week like they're up, the next week they're down. It's just it's kind of rough to watch them a little bit. And as I look back, I'm kind of shocked that this Colts team not only, competed with the Ravens earlier in the season, but then they go on and they beat Tampa Bay as well. When I look at that, it just doesn't make sense to me because I see them dropping games to teams they just shouldn't be. But it also showed, especially in last week's game, how much they depended on Michael Pittman. And that's why in fantasy this week, I'm definitely starting him. He was cleared to play after the concussion. I definitely think he's a monster start this week as Gardner Minshew really, really trusts him a lot. So there you go. I appreciate it, Big Peppy. That's the spirit there. Keep that quivering. The other guy that I'm starting, and actually I picked him up off the waiver wire. There's no way this guy should have been there, but in championship week, I ended up finding Zamir White on the waiver wire. Like this dude's just been going turbo as fuck for the fantasy playoffs. And Jacobs is listed as doubtful again. You best believe Zamir White's in my lineup. I'm hoping he brings home a championship for me this week against a Colts defense that's just super porous. So, in terms of guys I'm fading, listen, JT last week was ugly for him. 18 carries for 43 yards. Like, woof. I mean, things don't get any easier this week against this Las Vegas team that's just they've allowed over 100 yards on the ground once in their last 5 games. I don't think they're going to be doing it again this week. So I really am fading JT. The other guy is Devontae. And listen, like you saw it, right? And I just kind of told you about Aiden O'Connell. No completed passes after the first quarter. I don't think that's going to happen again, but I'm just not trusting him in a championship game. And that's super sad because Devontae was a late first round pick, early second round pick this year in fantasy. But without a solid quarterback, it's just rough. And we've already talked about it before. The Jets have already come out and said, like, they're going to pursue this trade in the offseason. They really want this dude. They're going to figure out a way to reunite him and Aaron Rodgers. All right, moving on here. We've got the Rams at the Giants. And so Matt Stafford and the Rams, they've just been looking really good lately. I'm starting Matt Stafford this week in my championship matchup just because I think he's provides more upside for me and at least safer upside than Goff. with Goff playing against Dallas. So even though I think Goff's a good play, I just like Stafford and the way he's been playing lately. So just a quick heads up, just like the Bills, like no one wants to see this team in the playoffs either. The Rams, yes, you probably can't name anyone on their defense besides Aaron Donald, but they've been playing very, very well. Yeah, they have the same record as the Seahawks, but they won both games over them this year, so they own the tiebreaker for that. And they're likely going to be a playoff team unless they drop the last two games, which I don't think is going to happen. Now, listen, they play San Francisco next week, so they kind of need to win this game. But in addition to that, I don't think if San Francisco wins this week and Philly loses and Detroit loses, even if they don't, right? Like even if Philly wins and San Francisco wins, they're going to own the tiebreaker over them. So I really think that game could be null and void next week. Now with the Giants, like listen, they've been eliminated from playoff contention, but they've won 3 out of their last 5 games, and I know a lot of people don't realize that when they think about the Giants and how this season's been. Yeah, I know they beat Green Bay, New England, Washington. Like no one thinks that they're contenders, but it's something. It is something for this team. They need something to build off going into next year. And like they thought their season was ruined when they lost Daniel Jones. Like, spoiler alert, it was ruined before that. But I just think it gives this team some momentum going into next year. And Brian Daboll definitely needs that. I think he's a good coach. I think they've just had a bad season. So, one thing I did want to mention about the Giants, like it was it me or did DeVito just like he quickly fell out of favor with this team? It seemed like all of a sudden we were talking about like all this Italian hype around him, and like we're showing his agent in the stands, and like he's getting all these visits at like pizza shops and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden he's like benched, and we're talking about Tyrod Taylor, which I'm a Taylor fan, but like it just seemed like he fell out of favor very, very quickly. So, uh, in terms of fantasy, listen, I'm starting Barkley. Like he's going to get his opportunities. Like he had almost 30 opportunities against the Eagles. You got to start him, right? Like especially if you're in the championship with Barkley on your team. Part of the reason you're there is because of him. You got to be running him out there. And my bet would be you probably don't have that many more running backs on your team that are as good as him. Uh, like I mentioned in fantasy, Stafford, Cup, Nakua, Williams, those 4 guys, like they're all viable starts this week with very solid expectations. My only concern would be if they get up high, you could see Nakua and Cup and Stafford kind of phased out of the game and then just run the ball with Williams. Williams could have a monster game this weekend. So just be on the lookout for that. The only guy I'm fading, Higby, like he has 15 targets over the last 6 games. Like that's really just not what you want. We had bigger expectations for him this year, and he just really wasn't able to get it done in terms of that. I know he was banged up for some of it, but I think he's fallen far short of what we thought he was going to be this year. All right. So moving on, we've got Arizona and Philly. So Arizona is now the beating stick of the NFL, right? Like they kind of have been this year. It just but after the Bears got their lickings in, now Philly gets their turn, and it's just kind of cruel to see that. But Philly could very well be the team that wins some fantasy championships for people this week. We're gonna see, right? Like it depends what kind of Philly team shows up. So they need to win out in order to have a shot at the number 1 seed. But San Francisco, like I mentioned, still owns the tiebreaker for them right now. Arizona just needs more talent on their roster, right? Like if they want to be able to compete, they need more. And I know Gannon, even with his like pew pew lasers type of weird stuff that he does, it's somehow worked for this team a little bit, even though they've been pretty bad this year. It's resonating with some of the guys within that locker room, and I think that's a good thing. So I would look for them in the offseason to add some serious talent. They're going to have a top 5 pick. They really need to be able to get more on that. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm right, because of Houston trading up, they're going to have 2 first-round picks. So definitely, they should be able to add some serious rookie young talent on this roster. In terms of fantasy, listen, the guys I'm starting: Hurts, AJ Brown, Swift, Devonta Smith. You have to roll them out there this week. Kyler as well. Listen, like this dude's been playing well, even though like the team hasn't been winning. He could still air it out against the Eagles. Like the Eagles have an awful secondary, and it seems like anyone can throw against them. There's just a slight concern. I know Kyler's listed as questionable. Like I'm sure he's going to be good to go, but just keep an eye on that going into the games tomorrow. James Conner, listen, he's been a decent play. Like he's going to get his opportunities against this Philly defense. I know some of the experts weren't too high on Conner this week, but don't listen to them. Like he's going to have opportunities to be able to run the ball, and also he can catch the ball out of the backfield sometimes. So be on the lookout for that. This Philly defense has really struggled, and teams have been able to put up a lot of points against them. Look at what the Giants did last week. So don't sleep on the Cardinals being able to do something against them. Also, Trey McBride, listen, he may run loose in this secondary and catch 10 balls. You don't know. I'm really curious to see how this is going to go down, but Kyler Murray loves this dude, and I really think that he could have a serious opportunity to pop off this game. Guys, I'm fading. Listen, Goddard. Yes, I know I faded him last week. I'm doing it again. He's only had 3 games above 71 yards this year, and it's not likely to repeat in back-to-back games. Even after that, like 2 9 target performances, I still don't trust him yet. He spent most of the season injured, and I'm not willing to buy into that yet. The other guy I'm fading, obviously Hollywood Brown. Listen, he was placed on season-ending IR. Just real sad for him, but I don't know if he's going to be here next year or what exactly is going to happen with that. But he just has not looked like himself this year. All right, moving on. We've got New Orleans at Tampa Bay. The Saints find themselves on the bad side of 7-8, and they're likely not making the playoffs this year, right? Like they need the pendulum to swing their way and knock out many other teams in the process. I just don't think that's going to happen, right? Like they do have a chance here to possibly crush Tampa Bay's playoff hopes, but Tampa Bay already beat them earlier in the season pretty handily, so I don't think that's going to happen. Tampa Bay, they're just looking like a tough playoff football team. Like they run the ball well with Rashad White. Baker is showcasing good decision making and has solid rapport with Evans and Godwin. And this team plays pretty good defense too. So that's a team that I would not want to see in the playoffs. I could easily see them, taking it to a team like Dallas. Ugh, that I know that sounds scary, but Dallas has been reeling lately. It's just not good for them. Uh, Tampa Bay has been playing pretty good football. So this is another team, like I mentioned, that could surprise someone in the wild card round, and I could see them, either taking it to Dallas or one of the other teams that are going to be in it. But mind you, they are going to have a home playoff game. So they're going to get a chance to stay rested, play at home, have another team come in. With them not having to travel, that's a very big benefit to them. A lot of upside. So, um, yeah, dude, you're right, Big Peppy, about that. Like Baker, so many people want to trash on this dude. I don't know. I was not a fan of him when he first came to the NFL. He seemed very pompous and arrogant, and I realized that was because I didn't know a lot about like where he had come from before, what he had done, all of this stuff. You just see like all of the stuff that ESPN highlights about him, but this guy's been through the ringer in the NFL. This is his fourth team that he's been on now, and he's finally in a locker room that really trusts him. And I believe if they win the division, he gets a nice sizable bonus, like another million or something like that. He's already said he wants to come back next year. He feels respected on this team, feels loved. Like this is a team that I really did not think was going to do that well this year. And boy, am I eating crow on that. So yeah, yeah, he's definitely not. Mac is, oh man. Well, maybe we can get into that a little later. But in terms of fantasy this week, listen, guys, I'm starting. Mike Evans, like he won't disappoint. Again, I need to bring up last year he had like the 56 point week in the championship game. I don't think he's going to do that again, but I can't put it past him. And his biggest kryptonite, Marshawn Lattimore, I don't think is going to be playing. So I think it really bodes well to think that Mike Evans could pop off. He could stay in the game and not get kicked out. So that's three very good things right there. Godwin, yep, I'm going to play him as well. He's been playing very well lately. Rashad White has looked awesome this year. He's been an absolute steal in fantasy and played very well. So definitely roll him out there as well. Um, Baker like even gets consideration this week. Like after he's only thrown one pick in his last 4 games compared to 9 touchdowns. Like that's massive. And like I'm glad that Big Peppy brought him up because I want to just take a little sidebar on him real quick and chat about him for a second. Like I mentioned, fourth team that he's on. He's on pace to eclipse 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns with his lowest interception rate of his career. And like I mentioned, they're likely going to win the division. That's insane. Like I couldn't be happier for him. He deserves it. Everything that's coming his way, he definitely deserves. So really nice, nice to see him finally get to the mountaintop there. Chris Olave as another guy that I'm starting this week. He's just looked really solid in his return from that ankle injury. And it was kind of an awkward ankle injury. If you remember me talking about it last week, it wasn't on the outside of his ankle. It was actually on the inside, which is very rare. And usually the part that does not get affected in terms of that ligament on the inside. So definitely good to see him back in there playing well. I think Kamara's going to bounce back this week. He may not, but this is the thing. If you've got him on your roster, you're definitely starting him. You have to. Rashid Shaheed could be a sneaky start, but I don't know him. I really would lean other places if I had to. And Derek Carr, I'm fading this week. I just I don't like him against this team. Yes, I know like they talk about how good he's been lately, but if he's going to get touchdowns, it's usually going to be in garbage time. And I realize those still count in fantasy, but not really the way I want to go about it. I think there's better streaming quarterback options this week. All right, so we've got San Francisco at Washington, and look, this uh, I'll catch you soon. I'll catch you soon, Big Peppy. All right, so San Francisco at Washington, like this feels like it's going to be a payback game for San Francisco. Like they were punched in the mouth last week. They weren't happy about it. Now they're going to punish the lowly Commanders for it. So just look for this defense to come out and really try to prove a point this game. The Commanders, they're going to try to play spoiler and kick a bully while they're down, but I don't know, man. Like Washington, they've lost 6 straight. Yeah, they'd love to turn it around against a team like San Francisco. I just not sure that's a likely outcome. In terms of fantasy, listen, the absolute fantasy MVP will be the 101 next year, CMC. Like every week, no matter the matchup, like even in a game where San Francisco lost, he still put up a ton of points. Like look for him to win some fantasy championships this week. Like shit. That's right. I'm playing against him. So I I really hope that doesn't happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if he absolutely pops off this game, puts up 50 points, and I end up losing. So Brandon Ayuk is another guy. Listen, he looked solid last week after having a couple up and down weeks for the past 2 months. But one game he booms, and the next like two he kind of busts. But this week I think he rides the boom from last week, and I really think he's going to have a good game. So Purdy, I know he's a little banged up, and listen, I know he had the 4 picks last week. 2 of them were not his fault, and I know people want to put a lot of blame on him and be like, I knew he was just a system quarterback. Like, okay, I don't know what you get by saying that and trying to prove that, but he's still playing on a team that's one of the most winningest teams in football. He's got a better record than most people out of their first 20 games in the NFL. And so, like, yeah, you could sit there and talk all the smack you want, but the guy's done very well. He's led a good team. You're only like any quarterback's only going to be as good as their playmakers unless you're Tom Brady and you can just make playmakers out of guys that aren't. But again, like this guy's played very good football outside of a couple games, and most teams would be begging for a quarterback to play that well. So yeah, make all the arguments you want about like, okay, like put any quarterback in there, put Dak in there, any of those people. Like this guy's been in that position, he's done it. Just give him the benefit of the doubt. So um, the only sad thing is if you did have him on your team, and I know he's been a great quarterback in fantasy this year for you, you're probably not in the championship because of him, maybe despite him, but he should get back on the horse this week, especially against this Washington team. The last guy I'm going to mention, Terry McLaurin. Listen, if there's a commander we're starting, it's him. Even with the change at quarterback with Brissett and Howell and kind of flip flopping back and forth, I'd still have him in there. Guys, I'm fading this week. Debo, listen, I expect a bit of what we had last week with Debo. I just it's just a feeling. Listen, I know Debo has the opportunity to be able to pop off. You may not be in a position where you can fade him in your league, and you're probably not going to. But I just don't like him this week. It's just a feeling I've got. Chris Robinson, listen, he's listed as questionable, but I wouldn't want to play him against this pissed off San Francisco defense. I feel like that's a recipe for disaster. All right, let's move on. Carolina at Jacksonville. Listen, don't I don't want you to look now, but all three teams in the AFC South are tied again after all three lost last week. So Jacksonville's not going to have Trevor Lawrence. Um, that's not good for them. But Carolina has been loving this role that they are playing of trying to just ruin teams' seasons. They almost beat Green Bay. Now they get a chance to take it to Jacksonville, where it's like the two expansion teams. It's kind of cool, but uh, I think Jacksonville's got everything to lose in this matchup, and they're in serious risk of not actually winning the division now, especially with Lawrence not playing. Guys, I'm going to be starting in terms of fantasy this week. Ridley, listen, he's hot, and even with Beathard targeting him, like he's been putting up points. Like he scored one touchdown with Trevor Lawrence last week. The other touchdown he scored with Beathard, and yes, it's not beat hard, even though some people want to say that it's Beathard, but he played pretty well with Beathard in there. I'm going to ride him with that. Now, the only concern I have is I also have Evan Ingram, who's going to be starting as well this week, and this hurts because I'm playing against him in the championship game, and I feel like I'm going to get crushed by him too. He serves as a really good safety blanket for quarterbacks, and seems like they're going to go to him a lot, so that could be kind of dangerous for me. But if you've got Evan Ingram, you're definitely rolling him out there this week. Etienne, listen, this is he is the best matchup this week. If you know, I mean, you saw what Aaron Jones did to this team last week, and that was basically just first half production by Aaron Jones. So definitely rolling Etienne out there. Guys, I'm fading. Obviously, Lawrence, he's out. Chuba Hubbard, listen, it's a toss up each week. Like they give up a ton of yards one week, the next they don't in Green Bay. So I don't know. I think this is the week they probably don't. I just don't think Carolina is that good where they can really establish the run that well. All right. So another game we've got Miami at Baltimore. Listen, these there were two absolutely epic matchups last week for each of these teams, right? And like now they get the luxury of playing each other. So it's like, hooray, you did so well in your last game. Now you get to play another really tough team. And there's a ton on the line this week for both teams. Like if they win, if Baltimore wins, then they clinch the first round seed and the bye. Miami, is aiming for that as well. Miami may be down Waddle. It looks like he's questionable. Hill and Achan too. Like it's just not looking great for them with all of them being questionable. Like it could be very difficult if they try to go into this game without them. And Baltimore, on the other hand, like they seem to really be feeling themselves after that win over San Francisco. Like they felt disrespected. They came in, they absolutely punched San Francisco in the mouth, and it was kind of brutal. One thing I did want to mention about Miami, and I talked about this on my other podcast, is that Miami, starting from like 2 weeks ago, the last four games they play are very difficult games. And for them to be able to win all of those games and then go into the playoffs and play, basically 7 weeks of playoff football, that's very difficult for a team to do. I do not know if Miami's going to be able to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. I just don't think that uh, I think they're going to get burned out. I really think that's going to happen. Now, they've got Tyreek Hill, and he's insane and is able to still do stuff. This defense has been playing much better, but it's very difficult for a team to go in and play consistently that much good football 7 weeks in a row. It's just very difficult. So I don't know who they're going to lose to, but I assume it's my bet that they will not make the Super Bowl because of that. In terms of fantasy, listen, guys, I'm starting Lamar. Duh, like this guy's he's a point magnet, right? And especially with his ability to gain yards on the ground, you got to throw him out there. Zay Flowers, regardless of matchup, I'm running him out there. Lamar just really trusts him. Uh, Mostert, listen, I know he's listed as questionable, but like Miami has to try to run the ball, and if they get close to the end zone, they're definitely giving it to this guy. He's been an absolute touchdown machine this year, and if it weren't for McCaffrey, he'd be leading the league in touchdowns. So, Gus Edwards, listen, he could be a championship winner for teams this week. I mean, they get close, they might try to just punch it in with the Gus bus, right? Like they don't even need Lamar to do a tush push, nothing like that. Like they just give it to Gus, and it looked like they were on the one. Gus Edwards was on like the 6 yard line and still pounded it in, right? Like it's just when you watch them run from that split back position, it's just he's running downhill so fast that by the time he hits the line of scrimmage, he's going to plow anything that's in his way. Um, Guys, I'm fading this week. Isaiah Likely. Listen, I just don't like him in this matchup. I just don't. Jalen Ramsey's usually been pretty good on tight ends, and even though Likely's a freak, I don't like it. Tua, I'm legitimately concerned for him this week, right? Like the Dolphins, they're so close to the playoffs with him being healthy. Both of these teams, right? Like Baltimore and Miami are two teams that we had injury concerns at the quarterback position for like the past couple years. And this is the first year it seems like we don't have those concerns. Very interesting to see kind of the way that's going. That both of them are healthy and both of them are healthy going into the playoffs. So it's kind of wild, but I do not want to see Tua get hurt. And if this game gets out of hand quickly, I hope they pull him so he doesn't have a risk of getting hurt. All right, so let's move on. We got Tennessee at Houston here. Listen, Houston needs this game to have a chance at the playoffs. Like they want to pay back Tennessee for wearing the Houston Oilers throwback jerseys, which is kind of awesome. Tennessee, listen, they're eliminated. They're just looking for to have some fun, right? So let's see how this ends up working out for them. But for me, like it's going to come down to whether Stroud is truly healthy. Now he's been cleared to play. But he was out the 2 weeks with the concussion. That was slightly concerning. Um, I think maybe they just want to be safe with him because he is a rookie, but he's starting. You got to roll with him, right? Especially in fantasy. Like he's definitely going to be a top 10 QB next season, no doubt. Like you're you're definitely rolling him out there this week. Devin Singletary, listen, he's been solid lately. Like, don't forget, like this dude was fed in the last matchup. He got 30 touches in the last matchup between running the ball and targets. I mean, it's insane. So definitely rolling him out there if you got him on your roster. Nico Collins, listen, he's got massive upside with Stroud playing. This is a guy that has the potential to win leagues this week in the championship matchup with Stroud being there. In terms of sleepers, listen, Derrick Henry, like I don't know if this is the end or not for him in Tennessee, but like I think, geez, I said fading, but really, this is my sleeper picks that I have for this. Sorry about that. So, Derrick Henry, I have as a sleeper. Like, as I mentioned, it could be the end of his reign in Tennessee. I just don't think it's going to happen the way most people think it will, with him kind of falling off a cliff. He's going to go out with a bang, and December is his month, right? Like, gets cold, people don't want to tackle. Like, I know they kept him in check last game, but I'm not sure that's going to happen again. I think he could pop off this game for teams. So the other one is Hopkins. Listen, if Cooper popped off for 200 plus yards against this team, maybe Hopkins is thinking he can do the same. I don't know if he's got 200 yards in him, but I definitely think he's got at least a chunk where he could definitely have a good game. All right, moving on. We got Pittsburgh at Seattle. Like, yes, George Pickens had a great day. We get it. Yes, he was overdue. No, he's not going to repeat this week. So, just so we know about that. Mason Rudolph, listen, he may have played well last week against Cincinnati, but Seattle's actually got a good secondary. I'm going to look for this Seattle defense to set the tone early and let Rudolph know he should head back to the North Pole. The Seahawks, listen, they're going to they're the seventh seed right now, but they need to win this game. They definitely have to, and they understand that as well. I hope Gino doesn't try to do too much in this game because he's not playing against a defense where you can be that extra dude and reap benefits of it. You don't want that happening. You don't want to hold the ball longer than you need to, especially with T.J. Watt and Highsmith. So in terms of fantasy, listen, the only guy I'm starting this week is DK Metcalf in this matchup. Like he's a dog, he's hungry. I expect him to absolutely dominate. Guys I'm fading: Najee, Warren, Ken Walker, Lockett, and Gino. I just don't like the matchups for any of them. And honestly, I wouldn't like the matchup for Metcalf with Porter Jr. there, except like Metcalf's an absolute stud. And he's that guy that will go out there and be like, I don't care how good you are. I'm not going to let you shut me down. He'll be physical. He'll get in someone's face. He doesn't care. So I definitely like Metcalf this week. Uh, Moving on, we've got the Chargers at Denver. Listen, the drama of the week has definitely been what occurred between Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and the Broncos. And, it's honestly kind of disgusting to see this play out in the media the way it has. Really, really frustrating to see that. It's just an awful look for the team, especially when they still have an opportunity to make the playoffs. And this is likely going to create a distraction. It just minimizes Sean Payton's impact as a coach as well for this team. And he has a realistic chance of losing this locker room with the way they kind of handled this and the way it's spilled into the media. Russ hasn't been cooking necessarily this year, but I think all of us realize why now. Like they had him essentially playing from a JV football handbook, playbook, right? Like just like, okay, whatever we can do to kind of minimize the opportunity for him to get hurt, because we don't want to pay him 38 million next year, 37, whatever it was. So it's just like, and it's kind of ridiculous the way it is. Anyhow, really bad look for the NFL in terms of business, and I hope the NFLPA looks into that because it's really kind of BS what they're doing to him. Now the Chargers, listen, these guys have shut it down for the season. Like they're keeping Keenan Allen out, so he's not playing. They've kind of just gone another direction. But I think big changes are coming, and they're just trying to figure out exactly where they're going to be in the top 10 in terms of the draft next year. Guys, I'm starting this week. Eckler, I don't feel great about it, but listen, he's been playing better. He made it up to double digits, so I feel like he's got a good shot against this Denver D. Guys, I'm fading. Listen, everyone else. Sutton's out. Like this game could be really, really ugly. I hope it's not, but it could be. All right. Let's see. We've got the Bengals at the Bengals at Kansas City. Like so it was in the news this week about Jamar Chase, right? Like he took a shot at the Kansas City secondary, basically like talking smack to them. I'm not sure why we're surprised. Like Chase is a dog and he can back it up. Like if it was Kadarius Tony saying this, like maybe we should care and pay attention and like rag on him. But it's Jamar Chase. Like the guy's been a stud in the league. Like just deal with it. He's given them bulletin board material. This Chiefs defense, like, has been what this team can be proud of this year. Like, the offense has just been lackluster and just plain rough to watch at times. Mahomes, he looks like a shell of himself, and it's kind of sad to say that, especially after him coming off a Super Bowl last year. But he just doesn't have a lot of help from the receivers, and like this whole wide receiver room needs a complete rework. Like keep Rice and cut the rest. That's basically my opinion on it. Cincinnati, like they've been competitive with Browning. Like the Bengals still have a 20% chance of making the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to, but still impressive that they have that with losing Joe Burrow. Now, in terms of fantasy guys, I'm starting. Chase is listed as questionable. He's listed as questionable, but if he goes, like I'm all in on him, right? You can't say no when it comes to Jamar Chase. Travis Kelsey, like you kind of have to, right? Yeah, at this point, like you've rode him all season. You kind of have to start him and hope that things turn around this week, but maybe they don't. What would really suck is if you don't start him in your championship week and he does pop off and you would have won with him and you lose without him, right? Like you don't want that to happen. So there's that level of regret with it as well. Rice, like he's been a top 10 wide receiver the last month. Like you got to roll him out there as well. And T. Higgins too. Why not? Like if Snead's on Chase, and I know Snead's a little banged up, like that just means Higgins is going to have opportunities to be open. So I wouldn't be opposed to rolling him out there. In terms of guys I'm fading, listen, Edwards Hilaire. Listen, He's got an excellent matchup and it favors him. I get that, but just some way, somehow, I see him butchering this opportunity. I don't know. Like, don't forget, this was the guy Mahomes said that he wanted. Uh, yeah, he looked decent for that one season, and then after that, like he just fell off a cliff, and it doesn't. It's kind of rough because like running backs don't have a huge shelf life as it is, but when you don't produce and you're not efficient, you're not going to make the lineup. Like it just kind of sucks for him. So I'm fading him. I'm also fading Mahomes. Listen, it's just the ending to a very rough fantasy season. If you're in a position where you don't have a better streamer, I get that, but like. Look at what Joe Flacco's been doing. Like you got to be working that waiver wire and finding those opportunities to grab guys like that. Hopefully you did that and instead of playing Mahomes. Um, Pacheco, listen, he's out with the concussion. Like this dude needs to just find himself a better helmet solution, right? Like it came off twice in that drive, and then he took a knee to the head. Like I don't know, man. They were saying like his dreads wouldn't fit in the helmet, but I mean that should not be a problem that you're worried about when it comes to the football field. Like you shouldn't get a concussion because your helmet can't stay on your head. That just is not a good thing. So all right, last game we've got Green Bay at Minnesota, and listen, everyone heard about the drama. Again, I love the last three games we had all this drama, right? With Ray Alexander at the coin toss where he almost messed it up. Like this guy's been injured for most of the season. He finally gets back in there and acts foolish. Like for me, it's just like that's silly, man. My opinion. I just like I think JJ would have gotten the best of him this game anyways, but that's just me. Listen, Green Bay still got a 28% chance of making the playoffs, and this guy's suspended for this game. So I hope they shop him in the offseason. I really hope they do. Like this team definitely needed you out there. You're a good player, but acting foolish like that, I just it's your focus clearly isn't on the game and just about yourself. So anyhow, listen, the Vikings, on the other hand, they're going to be hurting with the loss of Hawkinson. Like, I don't want people to underestimate this. He's likely going to start the next season on the PUP, but he's a big part of this team, and they are definitely going to miss him. You will see it early and often in this game. Um, in terms of guys I'm starting for fantasy, listen, Justin Jefferson, definitely. He's looked great since he's come back. Ty Chandler, I just like the matchup with him this week. I think he's going to really ball out. Addison, listen, if he's starting, you have to play him. The guy I'm playing against has him, and he's listed as questionable. But if he's out there, I mean, he's been incredible this year. And if not for Stroud playing so well, and some other guys in the league like Bijan, Jaden Reed, like Jordan Addison would be right there for rookie of the year. So, you know, or at least offensive rookie of the year. Aaron Jones, like he finally looks healthy, and he's just been a stud the last few weeks, right? We saw what he did against Carolina, and I felt like he wasn't even really working. Uh, he was playing very, very well, and I feel like he could have gone off for like another 50, 60 yards in that game. Jaden Reed, like I mentioned, he didn't play last week because he was banged up with the toe and the chest injury. But he started this weekend without a designation, and I think he should continue his touchdown streak this week. And I'm very happy because I got him on my team too. So very happy to see him playing. Guys, I'm fading. Listen, Jordan Love, not this week for me. It just I don't like the matchup. I don't think it's going to be a great week for him. He could go out there and play well, but I just don't like the matchup right now for him. And the last one is KJ Osborne. Listen, if this is only if Addison is playing, right? If not, then I put KJ right up there, and I would definitely flex him in there and start. But if Addison's there, I'm just not sure there's enough targets between JJ, Addison, and him, and also having Ty Chandler there to be able to get him to Osborne. So, um, all right, guys. Well, that wraps up for what we've got here. I just wanted to take a moment and just say thank you for this season. Like, I really appreciate you guys watching. It's been a wild ride. It's been my first fantasy football season streaming and kind of telling you guys, some of my plays, like what I would do, start sit decisions, everything like that. I'm really looking to bringing you guys some riveting content during the off season, with breakdowns, guillotine matchups, understanding like how to be able to rank players, team previews, everything like that. We'll have a nice little my guys segment as well, as we go through the summer, kind of monitoring some of the training camps. But I'm ideally going to be coming to you guys every Sunday. Make sure, if you are looking for more content from me and stuff, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, so you don't miss any videos that could be coming out. But I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate the support, and it keeps me pumped to keep doing this, as you guys, feed me for this. So, good luck in your championship matches this week. Really wish you the best of luck with that, and definitely bring home that trophy. Again, guys, thank you for all the support. Peace.